Those Democrats never do anything right. Well, on election night, they did a few things right, and I'd like to take a look at what worked for the Democrats in the midterm elections and why and how that should affect Republicans going forward. I'm Scott Ott with Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, and this episode of Right Angle is brought to you by the members, the faithful, the devoted, the $9.95 a month members at BillWhittle.com. Gentlemen, we saw that obviously the House has turned over, and now we will have House Speaker Nancy Pelosi or someone really a lot like her because of a shift of about 30 seats. Some of them are still up in the air right now. And so clearly the Democrats were successful in some aspect of what they did on a national basis. And I want to test out a thesis with you because my theory is that the reason why they were successful is because they didn't do it on a national basis, if that makes any sense.
Oh, no, that makes perfect sense. There's 435 races across the nation. There's no national ticket.
Yes, and this, in a way, is kind of a counter to the old contract with America concept that Newt Gingrich pushed back in the 94, 96, somewhere around there, 94 elections. And here's the way I see it. These are the four characteristics that I saw Democrats doing, especially in House races, a few Senate races across the country. And I'd just like to get your feedback on them, and we'll start with Steve on this one. So the four characteristics I saw were run local rather than national. Number two is run conservative in purple districts. Number three is run attractive, meaning find candidates who are charismatic or attractive figures. And number four is run women. Now, you could broaden this to include run veterans, run lesbians, run people of color, run people from other planets, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, for example.
I'm not sure that the veterans are going to particularly like that classification, but your point is sound.
So they're targeted groups designed to highlight a particular
run like Americans,
story.
In other words.
Yeah. So anyway, Stephen Green, do you think that was A? Do you think that's what happened? B, do you think it was intentional? And C, is there anything we can learn from it?
Yes, and yes. Although, because you made all the points I really wanted to make, just setting up your question. So instead of answering that with more than just my yeses, let me say something else. What's interesting to me, looking at I have to come back and look at the big picture now, because you outlined what they did so well and so thoughtfully, but looking at coming back at the big picture, the Democrats had an average midterm last night for the out of power party. They had an average pickup of between 25 and 35 seats. That's typically what happens, whether it's the GOP or the Democrats, the out of party power. Trump had a historic night in the Senate last night, and there still may be two more pickups. Although, gosh, Nevada was kind of a heartbreaker. What the Democrats tried to do, was a repeat of 2006, where they did run moderate candidates in purple districts. They did try to find veterans to run and that sort of thing. And their goal in 2006, and they executed it brilliantly, was to pick up 50 or 60 or more seats. And I think they picked up 63 seats by kind of hoodwinking the voters with all...
In 2006, they only got 30 House seats. You're talking about the 2010 election. They did pick up 63 seats.
The Democrats picked up 60 some odd seats in 2006. Plus a bunch in the Senate. That's when they took the House back under George Bush, when the Iraq War was going badly and all the rest.
Yes.
And so
I agree with the conclusion, not with the numbers, but go ahead.
They ran very similar candidates in 2006 all across the nation, and it worked in a much bigger way than it worked this year. And their plan was to put up these moderates who would then vote in lockstep with Nancy Pelosi once they got to the House. And by and large, they did, and the voters turned their backs and rejected that in 2010 in a huge way, once Obama wasn't on the top of the ticket like he was in 2008. So they tried it again this year, and voters didn't go for it in the same big way they went in 2006, because I think we're starting to catch on that when the Democrats run moderates, they're not really so moderate.
So, Bill Whittle, this strategy, whether you agree that they intentionally did something like this or not, I think does portend something for Republicans, because Republicans have had a tendency since 1994 of thinking that that big national campaign where everybody is mouthing the same message is the effective way to do it. You know, every ad in every district across the country was talking about how that candidate is going to usher in the new era of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. You know, all of them are going to be inviting MS-13 in to have dinner in your local church or synagogue. And so, you know,
reality mongering, in other words.
Yes. So but Republicans have, oddly enough, the party of federalism, the party of independent individualism, have tended to march in lockstep around a particular message. And I'm wondering whether you think that was, obviously the results weren't good, but is that the way to approach it, or should they get much more focused on their local congressional district and the particular needs of that district?
I've had a chance to really look at the results in detail and take a look at the Democrats' strategy and its outcome, and I think probably the main conclusion I was able to reach was basically.
Can't argue with that.
That's what I draw from their strategy.
So are you seeing a lack of strategy?
No. Let me just. I'm talking about the results.
Okay.
Okay, and we'll talk about the results in my episode. That's what I think of. That's what I think of the outcome. I think if they had not assumed all of those strategic positions that you've taken, it would have been red across the board. I think there's no question that they did the right thing in terms of their political objectives. But, you know, we talk about races, and then we talk about the national picture, and then above this sits the fundamental principles of conservatism and all the rest of it. But something sits above even that. And what sits above that is independent of Republicans, conservative, liberal, Democrat, all of it. What sits above this is when you are trying to convince people of your opinion, or rather, when you're trying to convince people to vote for you, are you required to tell them the truth, or does your political philosophy require you to act like you're the other party in order to get elected? Because what you basically said about the big elections and the successful ones that the Democrats ran, they ran successful where they were successful. By the way, Beto, you know, is a great example of the failure of that's the big raspberry thing. And we were talking last night on the show that he's going to be needing some kind of work. So Scott and I were mentioning that maybe Beto could become a waiter at Buca de Beppo. But seriously, if your entire strategy to get elected as a Democrat is to run as conservative as possible, that goes beyond politics and tells me that I'm on the right team, because I don't have to lie. I said it 100 times. You know, the great thing about being a conservative is I can say one thing and then do the same thing. And think about it. Think about it. Just consider two aspects of this, because this goes right to your strategy, Scotty. Just think about this from your own internal perspective. How would you feel if, in order for your party to get elected, you had to come out and support Marxism and socialism and talk about how great socialized healthcare was and make it sound like you believe it? What would that say about your philosophy? And what would it say about you as an individual person, that this was something you were willing to do? And this is the difference between them and us. And so, yes, you're right. Their strategy was a sound strategy. And applying the lessons of that strategy, I completely agree that we should be doing that in the future and making it a local election about local issues. And as far as of all the things you mentioned, you know, run conservative, well, we try to do that. Run women, run attractive. What was the fourth one?
That was the first one, and it was
local.
On my list, yeah, local. Yeah.
Okay, I think three of those are very sound. I think run conservative is good, run local is good, run attractive is good. And when it comes to running women, I think we ran some very good women, and they had a pretty good success rate last night. But running women just because they're women, I think is probably going to be the ultimate folly of the Democratic Party. This idea that it's all going to come to people are going to vote their gender, going to vote their skin color, going to vote all of this stuff. They've had some success with it. They've done a great deal of damage, but I suspect that those days are largely behind us.
Well, the cleanliness of theory is no match for the mess of reality, and the best laid plans of Democrats and men often off time gang agley, as the poet said. There is a tendency, there are two tendencies that are kind of fatal in the world of strategy. Number one is assuming that just because you did it, that's why you won. So if you had a plan and then you won and you assume it was because you had the plan, that's a kind of conceit that is liable to rise up and bite you. The second is that even if the reason why you won was because of your plan, the chances of that happening again, if you rerun a race in 2 years, are slim enough that you should basically start from a clean piece of white paper at the beginning of the next campaign, because there's no guarantee that all of those factors that were in play in the last election are going to be in play in the next election. I will disagree with my colleague Bill Whittle on one thing. I think that the paucity of House Republican women points to something more than just Republicans' reluctance to run women for the sake of running women. I think that there are some institutional barriers within the Republican Party that have kept women from rising to positions of power. I've seen enough at the state. Yeah, and I'll say why this is. Because there are people, and it's not because men are being sexist. It's because there are people in power in local committees and at state committees, and they have a circle of friends, and they make connections with people that they bond with, and they have a tendency to elevate the prospects of those people. And so if you find favor with the state chairman, or if you find favor with the governor or whatever, you can rise to a position of prominence. And just by the nature of the fact that that process is dominated by men, there are fewer women included in the potential pool. Republicans at the state level in Pennsylvania actually had a committee to recruit women and minorities. And people would show up for their meetings and shout huzzah and cheer and say that this is what we really intend to do. But there was no institutional process way of bringing them in. So I think you can't look at 90 women in the House and 84 of them being Democrat and say that it's just because...
That's a great point.
Yep. Yeah, and say just because Democrats are running women for the sake of running women. I think that there are plenty of women out there. There are plenty of blacks and Latinos out there and Asians out there and all kinds of other people out there who are all, by the way, the same kind of people, Americans, that the Republicans could be much more effective in recruiting them. That said, I think that the elements of the Democratic strategy were relatively shrewd and wise. Run local in a congressional district makes a lot of sense. Did not pan out as well for Beto O'Rourke, despite the fact that he visited all 254 counties and never let a moment pass without reminding you that he had visited all 254 counties. He actually rejected outside Democratic help at the end of his campaign. He didn't want Democrats coming in either to go door to door or to give speeches, not just big shots like Bill Clinton or Barack Obama. He didn't want the door-to-door busloads of people coming in. He wanted to make it a Texas race. And that did not pay off for him.
That's why it was so close.
Yeah, and so Josh Hawley beating Claire McCaskill in Missouri and Ted Cruz beating Beto O'Rourke in Texas.
And Arizona.
And Arizona going that way as well. I think you have situations that are one-offs, but not necessarily a bad idea. I think that Beto O'Rourke did a lot of smart things, got a lot closer than he should have in what used to be a bright red state, and Ted Cruz almost let this thing slip through his fingers. And yes, Beto O'Rourke is going to have a new job after this, but it's not at Beto de Beppo. It's going to be running for president of the United States. And because he was a loser of a high enough caliber that he's the natural heir to Hillary Clinton. Ladies and gentlemen, for Bill Whittle and Stephen Green.
We've got to find the most successful loser in America, and there we will plant our flag.
I can't wait to see his next moral victory.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a moral victory to watch this show sometimes. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making it possible. I'm Scott Ott with Stephen Green and Bill Whittle. Y'all have a great day.